It has to have substance. So for me, as a beauty brand entrepreneur, I had gone round the world making over women, and I realised the one thing that challenged women was knowing what makeup to wear. So I want to make it easy for them, portable for them. I want them to be able to buy it online, whatever their age. And I wanted to actually focus on a target of a 35 plus woman because I felt she was underrepresented in the market.
From British style icon
to beauty mogul,
Trinny Woodall
is redefining beauty standards
with her multi-million-dollar brand,
Trinny London,
empowering women worldwide to own their look.
Being in control of what my product is and developing it so that it feels incredibly unique, so that we can talk about it with authenticity, I think that's really important. For me, it's about how can we leave every woman feeling better and more joyful and happier. And we do that with products, community, content. We're kind of more than just selling you a lipstick. There's days when you're going to just think, will it ever work? And if you know you're giving it your all, then it's to remember you never know what's behind the closed door.
Hear the stories, learn the proven methods, and accelerate your growth and future through entrepreneurship. Welcome to the Foundr Podcast with Nathan Chan.
Trinny, thanks so much for taking the time, round 2.
Good to be back here.
So the first question that I ask everyone that comes on, for those who are not familiar with who you are in Trinny London, how did you get your job, aka how did you find yourself doing the work you're doing today?
I got my job because I started a business and I employed myself. But I knew that I wanted to get back into DC. I'd done it before when it was not even DC. I just call it online in 99. I think we spoke about that, about challenges of starting business, what you learn from a failure. And I think I had gone round the world making over women, and I realised the one thing that challenged women was knowing what makeup to wear. So I want to make it easy for them, portable for them. I want them to be able to buy it online, whatever their age. And I wanted to actually focus on a target of a 35 plus woman because I felt she was underrepresented in the market. And so that's what we launched.
I'm curious to hear from your perspective, besides this incredible range of products and the brand that you've built, what do you think has really caused this really strong growth?
I think it's a mixture of honing in on an audience that feels it hasn't been spoken to and speaking with a message that resonates. Because there's a lot of noise out there. There are squillion beauty brands. There's a ton of online beauty brands. And there's a ton of legacy beauty brands. So it's about how do you cut through? And it's got to be mission-led. And we are a mission-led business. So for me, it's about how can we leave every woman feeling better and more joyful and happier. And we do that with products. We do that with community. We do that with content. You know, we're kind of more than just selling you a lipstick. So I feel to break through in any industry, your point of difference has to be something that's very emotionally driven. It cannot be product driven. It has to kind of have that whole emotional halo because that's how we most respond to things in life. You know, we need to have that draw. It needs to pull on something inside of us that makes us think, this could shift me, or this will make me feel better, or this is going to bring something else into my life. So we do that with everything when we talk about Trinny London.
Yeah. And how has it evolved over time? What was the suite? What did you start with?
We started with kind of SKUs. We started with 100 SKUs and we launched, in fact, no, we had 49 SKUs when we started, and then we quickly added in 2 things that had quite long ranges. Started with makeup because that's what women would see when I did makeovers on them, and I used to travel around the world doing makeovers, and they have a complicated relationship, we all do, with body, hair, face. But if you do someone's face and they love it, they then can see everything else. You know, they're sort of think, okay, that's good, and then they'll look at the hair and look at the body. And so I felt this is the element that if we can get that right and make it really easy, you know, there are so many women who just don't want to really do makeup because they think, where do I start? And there's other women who've done it the same way for a long time and they think, I'm kind of embarrassed to go up to the department store counter and say, help me to rethink how I do it, you know. So we needed to give messages that would let women know that we were there for this kind of woman. And I think that's what we do, yeah.
And so
over the last, I mean, if compared to when we started, I remember when we started, the day we started, and we did £6,000 or something. It was just so exciting. You know, we were on Shopify, and it was like, you know, the bing, 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 and you're watching it. Any entrepreneur knows this feeling of that, just that kind of the ping. And I remember we all sat around we had a table like this, and there were not so many of us. And it was so exciting because you've, you know, worked on something for a long time, but that day that you actually launch it, people actually putting their faith in and buying it is a huge step for anybody who is, you know, doing a business which has a commercial product in it and it isn't a service. So then it just grew, and it grew really nicely each year. You know, we've grown over 6 years, you know, if you apportion it, we've grown 120% a year. And I think when we grew, I knew that we wanted to have a very good retention. And at the time, I think we spoke about this before, but at the time it was all about new customer only and not retention. I mean, what we speak about, anyone raising money today, it's about what's your retention? You know, that is the key thing. Retention, EBITDA, you know, that triangle, it's got to be those three things of, you know, a number of customers, etc. So we had got this very good retention, and we had really good cohort data. And I think each year, those early cohorts have stayed with us. So in a way, you're really building a business on a foundation block, not so much on quicksand, and you feel that strength. And it goes back to this old adage of word of mouth and getting somebody who, you know, somebody who's a Trinny London star customer, which is about, I think, 65% of our customers, or 65% of revenue, but actually 20% of our customer, is this person who actually comes in and she buys really deeply into the brand. And that is our perfect kind of customer, because they're like, I don't have to look any further. I've come here, and I feel that's helped us a lot in our growth, because then as we develop a new vertical, and last year, I think I just launched skincare when I saw you last time, and now it's been over a year, but it's now about 35% of our revenue.
Oh, wow.
Already. And they're more, you know, they're more replenishable SKUs. You know, you might add to the collection of makeup, but skincare is a different proposition in terms of retention and looking at retention of customer and retention of products. So it's an interesting when you swivel, because a lot of people who start as makeup in one area and going to another, it's about how far can you stretch? You know, how many verticals do we bring out as we grow? So for us, growth has been around bringing out a second vertical when we know we want to do more after that, and proving that vertical. So we proved in 18 months that revenue growth. Then it's about location. So last year we had just started to localize, and we did distribution in Australia instead of shipping from the UK. So actually implementing all those warehouses, all of that, that's a big deal. And you've got to be of a certain size to be able to handle localization, 2 warehouses, double back-end system, integrated ERP system. That's all been a fucking nightmare, but you know, they always is. And just warehouse integration for anyone who has stock, it's a challenge. But doing that then enabled us to grow more in Australia. We used to be about 15% or 12% in Australia, and it took us to about 20% Australia, because suddenly there was that low-hanging fruit of the customer the person who followed us for a long time, but shipping of $26 was a lot. And now she could buy 2 products, discover the brand, and then buy into the brand. And at the same time, retail. So the play of retail and e-com, which I think we'll get onto, is really interesting. And I think a lot of businesses now who have been totally D2C, and they're looking at what they need to do in retail. They've got maybe investors who are saying to them, hey, you've got to go straight to wholesale, you know, or there's some people who are finding it challenging to raise money. It's a very interesting area. Where is e-com going? So for us to date, we've expanded our geographicals, we've expanded our channels, and we've expanded our range. And I think that really is how you grow.
Hey Foundr fam, I want to take a quick break from the conversation to talk to you about something super exciting. We're officially partnered with Omnisend, the email marketing and SMS platform built specifically for e-commerce founders. We've been recommending Omnisend to Foundr students for a while now because it just works. Whether you're launching your first store or you're scaling to 7 figures, it really helps you automate your marketing and get real results. Did you know on average, Omnisend customers make $68 for every $1 they spend, which is an insanely good return on investment. And because you're part of the Foundr community, you get 50% off your first 3 months with the code FOUNDR50. Just head to omnisend.com/founder without the E to get started. All right, now let's jump back into the show.
Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned retail versus D2C. It's really interesting. One thing I've noticed, and I've shared this before, all of my successful e-com friends, the ones that were purely D2C when, challenges happened with paid advertising past couple of years versus the ones that had a good mixture of D2C and retail, they were not hit nowhere near as hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm seeing more than ever now, businesses are moving into D2C, moving into retail.
retail.
Yeah, 100%.
I think it's a mixture of, I think it's a kind of, not a perfect storm, it's the opposite of that, all right? But we had the iOS release, we had Facebook changing everything. So that has affected people, our LTV over CAC is still healthy. We have a decent ROAS of like 200%. But, it's about what's the maximum you can push on Meta each day. And, we look at, I'm sure lots of people who are in the business, it's like, shall we do everything the Facebook way or shall we do it our way? And I speak to lots of other companies, like there's some interesting people out of Israel, there's some great tech in Israel of really having that layer on of their own data scientists, layering on top of Facebook. And we implemented Snowplow last year, which gives you first-party data. So it enables us to really look at what is that customer, where are they coming from, what ads are they coming from, what's resonating. Because there's one thing Facebook telling you what's working, and they definitely take,
the attribution.
Attribution is such a fucker. They just, they really like to own it all. Otherwise it would be 120% would be Meta. So it's looking at that. But I think the funnel has changed. And, speaking to people at Facebook, and I've got a few decent people there. It's all about how you're changing the proportion of spend in the funnel, because it used to be you'd be doing 100% on click, and now it's actually brand awareness. And I'm talking about DC brands. I'm not talking about legacy brands like Coca-Cola and stuff who are doing the brand awareness anyway. But for us, it's about taking some ad sets and thinking, all right, what if we do 30% brand awareness and 70% click?
Yeah, direct response.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. So when you launched, how much did you raise? Can you share how much you raised?
Yeah, we raised, initially I did, in England, you can do an SEIS scheme, which is an enterprise initiative scheme, but you can do a junior one. So I raised 150,000 and that lasted me about a year. And then I ran out and I sold clothes. I sold my house because I couldn't afford the mortgage. So, you got to bootstrap. And we talked before about Gary Vaynerchuk and like, what can you sell? So I had that journey of what would I have to let go of in order to start the business? And I did that. And then we raised 2.5, the first raise, when we were about a year before we launched. And then a year after we launched, we raised 3.1. So we've raised 7.6 in total. And I think to get to our revenue on that, amongst our competitors, it's comparatively, so maybe Glossier and Tilbury at this stage, which are the only other, maybe would have raised 20 million. So it's good and it's bad. It's good in so much that, we have a positive EBITDA, but the momentum of having a lot of cash behind you is not available to us, but it makes you also careful with money. And so, we look at Tilbury, which has been phenomenally successful, but really probably launched more as a retail brand. And COVID, they pivoted and they became more D2C, and maybe they're 50-50, I don't know. Glossier, on the other hand, they had to go to retail post-COVID because they had such an issue with, there are times in any brand's life when you're going to use a lot of people to build, and then you're going to get off some of the fat, you're going to get lean, and you're going to do that. And it's going to happen in every single company.
So I think what I love about this story is a lot of people would look at you and go, oh, well, you're a celebrity. You're on TV. It's easy to build a brand, right?
Well, I wasn't on TV when I built this brand. I think raising money, did it get me a meeting? I emailed 250 people and I got 49 meetings. So 1 in 5. And of that, one person invested. And then consequently other people did. But, that initial thing. So maybe it gets you in the door. But equally, people have preconceptions which aren't always good. because they might think, oh, you work in TV, what do you know about running a business? Or they might think, I had a lot of interesting comments when I was sitting in front of investors around, are you too old to start a business? Do you have a big enough social media following? Who's actually going to run the business? Do you know how to read a balance sheet? Lots of that kind of stuff. So you will perhaps, I think from fundraising, I would say oddly it's not an advantage, although, because I think everyone has to have the hustle, and if you have the right hustle, you can get a bloody meeting. It's being tenacious. It's getting to know the EA of somebody you want to get to. It's showering them with loveliness. I had a husband who was so utterly brilliant at that. And he would always just get to know the assistant of somebody he wanted to get to. And he was utterly charming to them. And he always got a meeting because they wanted to put him in for a meeting, because he was tenacious. And so instead of sending the email always to the person you want to get to, find out their EA. And maybe, if you've got 2 or 3 refusals or nothing, no acknowledgement, go via the EA and charm her or him. Let's not be discriminatory here, sorry.
Yeah, it's all right. No, look, you got to find the gatekeeper.
You've got to find the gatekeeper.
Yeah, that's how I started with Foundr. And first 4 months I got interviews with Richard Branson, finding the gatekeeper, off you go, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, okay, yeah, I love this part of your story that, because most people would go, oh, well, you had a massive social following, you had a ton of money, and then you've just kind of attached this brand. And this is a real business that you've built.
I had 62,000 followers. It wasn't a massive social following, I have to say, even though this is like 2013 or 14. Yeah. But I didn't particularly. And when I did the first, P&L and looking at the projections of the business, I literally had to do it all as a conversion of a percentage of people who followed me on social would buy. So I said 3%. Because I thought 3% conversion online feels right. So I just said that. And then I thought, how much will they grow per year? Yeah. And so we did the projections on that. And when I had one of our investors who came in the second round, and she then left that investment house and she sent me a frame thing when she left, and it showed our 5-year projection. And, it showed that nice sort of hockey stick we all want to see. But she just put in it, you are the only company that came to me with a 5-year projection. And exactly the figure you said is what you did.
Yeah, wow.
Which is kind of like,
That's impressive.
I think it was luck. I was
going to say,
I'm going to say it's luck. Because,
in.
We can think of a year, maybe 2. But tell me, anyone listening, any entrepreneur listening, really? No, it was luck.
Yeah.
But it was nice luck.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you've done an exceptional job then if you've gone from 62,000 followers, because these numbers are vanity metrics, really building a strong community and connecting with that community.
And the depth of that community, because we have followers. So across all channels, we might have 4 million followers, all right? But we have a community which is about 150,000 people. And not all of that community are customers, but the Trinny Tribe, where we have, in Victoria, we have 6,500, in New South Wales, we have nearly 7,000. So they're just vested and they feel a part of something and they feel a connection to other women. And maybe they're also being allowed to be the person they want to be in this environment. And they're people who are not naturally people who would be on social all the time. You kind of think, my daughter's on TikTok the whole time, but when you get to like 40s and 50s, everyone is on, we have, I'm also doing a book here, in the queue, there were 2 75-year-olds who were like, so, and then I do this, and I love what you said on stories yesterday. And, it's like, you think, this is fantastic. I love that.
So tell me, how did you come up with the idea of the Trinny Tribe? Where did you learn?
Wasn't us.
Okay.
Wasn't us. And I think the success of the Trinny Tribe is that we didn't start it. It was started by a woman in northwest England called Kelly, and she followed me. And I think we hadn't even launched, I don't know if we'd launched Trinny London yet. Paris, is she here? No, she's not. We hadn't launched Trinny London, I don't think. I don't think we had. So I was speaking to Chloe and Dido, but I don't think we had. But she just followed what I did. But it was very close to it. It was like 3 months before. And then after going for about 6 months, we noticed all these sort of Facebook groups that had taken a tiny bit of our logo or a picture of me, and they just were dotting up all over the shop. And so we reached out to them and we said, look, do you want to kind of come together as a group, because you're all doing the same thing, and some people don't know which tribe to join, and they're all like, so we said, should we regionalize you, because it would be natural to geographic. And so we did that. We have a community team now who we get about 13,000 comments a week through different social channels. But for us, it's always been really important to allow that community to feel we're always there at the end of a piece of social. And so there's now 34 tribes in 17 countries. And some of them are tiny, some are 500 people, like Dubai probably has 500 people. And then Victoria, Australia has 6,500. So they are, engaged. We have each of them who are admins of the pages. We said, do you want to call yourself ambassadresses? And then after like another year, we said, look, the few days before something launches, we'll send it to you so that you can, because they're kind of, their local tribe look to them and say, what do you think of this? So we then give them the chance to try it. But I think we give the ambassadors maybe a little discount, but it's actually more an emotional give and take. And I think that's why, I think when these things are monetized too much or they're started by the business, there's a certain commercialization which doesn't allow for better organic growth. And I think something like this, you want to let that organic growth flourish. Also, they're your biggest champions and they're your harshest critic. So if we do something and they're like, diddle-um, they're a real sense check for stuff. And you need, as a business, you don't want to get, you don't want to get over here when you need to hear what's going on. And they are really good at that.
So in saying that, is it just Facebook groups that you guys are using? Or
They're Facebook groups. There's a few, there's lots who use Instagram, but what's good about Facebook is it's a two-way communication tool. Instagram isn't. Instagram is a platform and you leave your comments. It's a two-way tool on DMs, but it's not a two-way tool in community. And Meta is still, Facebook is a community. It's the only platform on social media which is a true ability to have a community. And I don't think that would change. As much as people might diss Meta or whatever, there is a very strong community there.
Yeah. So what advice would you give to early stage founders that want to develop like an incredibly strong community like you guys have?
It's interesting. I think, does it depend on the age of the customer you're getting to? Does it depend on the attitude of the kind of customer you're going to acquire? Because you can look at customers attitudinally, and they could be any age, or you could look at them like it's a millennial, it's a Gen Z, whatever it might be. And then it's about, where are they chatting? Where are they chatting with each other? And how do you just get involved in that chat? How do you, in a way, do something which makes them talk about you? And it's about so understanding what maybe is lacking in their life and being able to be that voice that talks about it. And I think in anything, whether it's Gen Z or millennial or baby boomer, if you're talking about something that people are thinking about, they look to hear more.
Mm. And in the early days, how often were you in the groups?
In the groups a lot. Last night I was, we did some events. We arrived here 2 weeks ago and we did Sydney, and, we did a lot of press in Sydney, and we had a tribe event. And then we went to Brisbane. So then I look and I see what they're all posting, and I like comments, and, always late at night, I'll just go through and I'll like comments. And Instagram, I do it all myself on my channel, but on Trinny London, we do it. But I just feel it's really important to, I might get, 200 to 400 comments a day, but you get a sense of things. I remember this guy who started a competitor to British Gas in England, and I sat next to him at dinner. He was a very cool founder, and in fact, I think, did Rich Branson also invest a bit in him? I can't remember, but he was a cool man. And he said his office was in customer service. That's where he actually put it, because he wanted to hear what people are thinking and talking about. And when people don't get the response they want, they DM me. So I hear what could be a problem, what is a problem, what they love.
Mm. So early stage startup founders, if they want to start a beauty brand, very, very, very competitive now, more than ever. You look at AI, it's so easy to create a business now. You look at Shopify and the tools available, much easier.
So much easier.
Like,
I
it
came
is
out of Shopify
insane.
before they launched Shopify Plus. We went into commerce tools, and I'm like, just challenging.
So you have to have multiple. Back then, you couldn't even have multiple stores. You had to have multiple separate stores.
Yeah,
No Shopify.
and now that's all changed.
So a lot has changed.
So
right?
technically, much easier.
Correct.
Getting the customer, more challenging.
Yeah. So, what advice would you give to early stage startup founders that want to start a beauty brand? How do they stand out?
I'm going to say one thing first, is I think some of the reasons people fail and don't get it off the ground is they spend too long on the product development of what it is and too little on how are they going to sell it, And Barbara, who we both love, Shark Tank, we so love Barbara. You interviewed her, didn't you? She's so fab. She was like, do you remember the thing? 87% is good enough. So challenging for an entrepreneur where 100% has got to be the norm. But I never forget her saying that. She said that to one of the pitches. And I was like, that's so true. And I was lying in bed next to my partner and I was just thinking, when I was trying to be too perfectionist, and I just thought, it's got to be. I mean, at the very beginning, you want to be 100%. But so that's the first thing I'd say is whatever you've got to feel, it might be a great product and you might feel you have got a point of difference in the market, but go out and see where are people buying whatever it is you're selling and how are they selling it? So is your physical product different? Have you invented some incredible new raw ingredient? Or is the packaging and branding phenomenal? Because in the world we live in today, packaging and branding can definitely get a product off the ground, but they will not ever make it a legacy brand. And it's like, you don't want to build to have something in 5 years just die. I think we all want to build to have something which is there and becomes establishment. It's always maybe a bit rock and roll, but you don't want to do those turns. So it has to have substance. So for me as a beauty brand entrepreneur, we went for skincare, we have our own lab. So for me, being in control of what my product is and developing it so that it feels incredibly unique, so that we can talk about it with authenticity to show its point of difference in the market, and it gives you the passion in which to talk about your product. So I think that's really important in terms of that, making it. And cutting through the noise is about understanding what's out there now, or if you're filling the hole, then where is it going to resonate the most with those people? And how, there's I mentor a few people in the UK, and there's a girl who has a jewelry brand. She started when she was 18. She's now 21. Maybe she's 22. And she did this thing where she started off on a minute level with girls who went to schools where there was like a sixth former who was influential. And she sent them product. So she didn't go to influencers. She went on we talk about micro-influencers. We're talking about them for 10 years, all right? But I found this whole strategy where she was getting literally into a school of 500 kids. She knew that 13 to 16-year-old looked up at the 17 and 18-year-old, and that she would get them to do stuff. And she created these micro-influencers in incredibly targeted. Those are the places. So she has started with 25 schools, and she's building up a really good business, and she's turning over a couple of million. I'm not going to say the details, but that's how focused she became. Is I'm making this jewelry. Who's going to love it, and who's going to want it even more? Because who's going to love it is the people who will tell the people who's going to want it even more by how they tell them and talk to them and communicate in their language.
Yeah, it's much easier to compete if you get your target market so dialed in, that niche so dialed in.
And really putting them on the wall. Get whoever your target is. I like to take things sometimes out of online and put on the wall, who is that person? This is really old-fashioned marketing, but what do they look at on social? Where are they buying from right now? Who are they hanging out with? Who are their influences? All these things are just know that customer.
Do you think you need to raise money to start?
I don't know. It's really tough because raising money you can get your throat slit right now. It's a ruthless market, and fundraising is really challenging. And there's a lot of people sitting on money right now, not investing, because they're thinking that sounds like something I invested in a few years ago. So it is challenging to raise money. And I would say bootstrapping, if you can, for proof of concept, will mean that when you go to that fundraise, you will not be shredded in terms of the cap table, because otherwise you will. If you raise too early and people are saying, I'm taking a big punt on you, they're going to be really greedy in the cap table. And then you're going to find you're a couple of years in and you might even already be close to being minority. And you need at least, if you're a founder, you have a sense of what your product is and your market is, if it's, a D2C brand. And you need to protect your sense of it, because you come up with the idea and there might be people along the way. There's definitely going to be people along the way as you grow who will know more than you in different areas. But if you get people in too early, they might direct you to a way that is where they feel the market's going. And maybe you have a real intuition where you feel you have the vision to see something else. And it's very difficult sometimes to define, what do we trust in our vision versus where are they telling me something I need to hear? And that's, going out to see investors. Even if you're not fundraising, it takes a lot of time out of growing your business, but it's interesting to understand the market. It's interesting to see what's launching. It does give you information, but it takes a lot of time out. And if there's other ways that you can do it just for the first sort of 6 months or a year, I think people are looking, when I raise, people did pre-revenue, but doing pre-revenue now is very challenging in this market.
Hey guys, I really hope you're feeling inspired from today's interview. Now, the truth is, all successful e-commerce founders started from zero, with a spark of an idea and a whole lot of determination. But let's be real, building or growing an e-commerce business is no walk in the park. And that's where Foundr Plus comes in, which I'm really excited to share with you. It's a culmination of a decade worth of work at Foundr. So if you're feeling stuck in your e-commerce business, you're lacking confidence to move forward, or you're worried about making costly mistakes or not knowing how to grow your business, Foundr Plus is here to support you on your journey. You get access to a customized learning pathway with proven frameworks from successful e-commerce founders for fast results, incredible programs, a supportive community, weekly live mentorship, exclusive savings on startup tools, and 24/7 real human support. Try Foundr Plus today for just $1 for 7 days so you can accelerate your business goals. Visit foundr.com/start $trial or click the link in the description to claim your trial. All right, now let's jump back in the show.
So do you believe it's possible to build a successful beauty brand, not raising any money, starting really small? You said you started with like 40 SKUs, maybe just starting with one SKU, like a very simple,
For sure. You have got brands who have, I'm just like trying to think, there's a brand called Gizou, which is like a hair brand. And she was an influencer and she started, but I don't know if investors went to her and then they financed it. You have some people who might literally start with one product. It is challenging, and it depends how much time you feel you have to have the patience to grow it. Years ago, I went to see, not years ago, 2 years ago, I went to see Leonard Lauder, whose mother's Estee Lauder, big purchaser of beauty brands. But in our conversation, he said to me, Trinny, biggest thing I can tell you, patience. Which was interesting, because sometimes, we think, and I'm going to say this, but I think to myself, we're the young ones, we know what we're doing. I'm saying this like I'm nearly 60 and he's like 80. But it's important sometimes to look at those people who have founded billion-dollar businesses. Very different times, but fundamentally you're selling a product to a consumer. So even if the method by which you're selling it has changed for the era you live in, some of those fundamentals are actually identical and they never changed. And so when he said that to me, I always noticed that when I strategically make impulsive rather than intuitive decisions is when I don't have my patience. it's just an interesting one. So going back to your question, Nathan, of should you fundraise or should you be, it requires patience. It's very challenging financially because you've then got to be in a position where you think, do I rent or do I live with my parents? I mean, if we're talking to people who are in that situation, then, can I do it out of my parents' garage for a bit? Can I make that my office? How can I fund my product? Because when you're funding product, if you're going to self-fund, the cost per SKU is going to be more expensive than if you can order more and grow the business. So there is that point before you get to that inflection point where you're actually going to have a better gross margin, where it's more expensive for you to do it. But it means that you can get to a stage where you could have, a positive impact where you're not having to wait for your next revenue to buy your next stock. And then when you go to an investor, you'll be in a far stronger position. But I think there is no one right or wrong way. It's really how you are emotionally as a person and what motivates you as to which route, and also the markets.
And how big you want to go.
Well, all right. So if you're listening, I don't know if there's anyone listening who would say, I just want to grow a really small business. Have you ever had somebody sitting opposite you, Nathan, who said, I actually just want to grow a small business?
Never.
Okay, fine. So
Never.
The world is your oyster. I sat down with a woman who founded Net-a-Porter, Natalie Massenet, and she said to me, she gave me some lovely bits of advice. So she said, Trinny, from day one, you're a global brand. Never forget it.
Yeah, you make an interesting point around kind of how big do you want to go, and this kind of, is it ever enough?
Well, are they two separate things? Because is it ever enough is a state of mind. And I don't know many entrepreneurs who go, it's enough. Okay, so I think that's the burden you carry as an entrepreneur. It's kind of never enough. And that's what propels you forward all the time. And it's just, there are people who like that. And there are people who they get to a stage where this is enough. And I look at people sometimes like that and I think it would be lovely to have your life, because it would be a life of far less worry. You wouldn't be so kind of challenged every single day. You wouldn't be kind of pounding the streets, like I was coming to you today and I had my team with me staying at this hotel, and I was like, I had so many things on my mind. I had to walk fast and get away from everyone, so I was literally crossing the streets and they were all behind me going, she's just, where the fuck has she gone? But it was just because there are a lot of thoughts inside my head right now. And, the challenge for me is I'm running a business. There's over 200 people in it, and I'm here promoting the business as well. And that's my most challenged time, is wearing those two hats and feeling far away from a lot of decisions I'm making right now around the business, when I also need to be here focused 100% on this.
Yeah.
That's my biggest challenge.
Yeah, because the personal brand, you're doing it so well and it's really driving the growth, or partly driving the growth. But then operationally, you're the CEO.
But I have a great COO. I've just hired a really good CFO, CRO. I combined that role, and I found that I combined that role because it's like cash in, cash out.
That's
interesting.
That's an interesting
Isn't
profile.
that?
I'd like to meet that person.
Yeah, I know, because generally, I interviewed lots of CFOs, and I met this one, and I thought, actually, this is interesting.
Okay.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, so you got a strong leadership team.
Strong leadership team, good C-suite team, great leaders in each department. I think building up a team and looking at where the focus is each year. So right now what I'm doing is I'm looking at where is our focus now? So who are the people in the business we need for where we want to go now? So I am looking now at, we need to look more at what would wholesale look like if we get to wholesale? What does retail look like when we're doing, those are roles now that probably 3 years ago, 2 years ago, COO can do that role, and just lead that, because it's such a small proportion of our business. It's 10% of our business. But as we grow into retail, we need to look at what that is. And I think the challenge for D2C brands now is, whatever market that you're targeting, people need to, in order to trust you as a brand and believe what you are, they need to see the physical manifestation of the D2C brand. And if they don't see it, it's kind of like it's here today, gone tomorrow. And there are a lot of DC brands that are here today, gone tomorrow. So having the pop, like the way we've done in Australia is we have these kiosks, and we call them pop-ups, but they're actually permanent stands. And we try and do them in front of a Sephora, or we're opening an Emporium here in Melbourne, our second one in November. And we need people to see that, so that, even though when we localized here and we just, it was fantastic for online as soon as we localized, they would then see, I was looking today at the area, and I went into Emporium before I came here. So people sent me videos, and I was like, where are we going to be? It's really interesting about, this is the interesting thing about when you do your physical, where you're going to be. So mostly you'd sort of say, got to be where all the premium brands are. We've got to be where Aesop is. We've got to be where Camilla & Mark is, Zimmermann, all that. And I looked at that spot today and I thought, great, but outside of those areas, pop-ups aren't necessarily allowed. Then you look at traffic and you look at route in which they're going to get to the stores, in which they might do other parts of their life, that kind of customer. And they have to come off Lonsdale Street, and they go up and they hit Nike, and then they go right, and then they take the escalator to go to Zimmermann and Camilla & Mark, and they'll pass us. So we want to plonk ourselves right in front of them, and Mecca's just there. So it's about, whatever your brand might be, if you're going to do a pop-up, what does that look like? How are you going to make that noise, which then you put on your social channels, which people then see and think, look how physical they are? Because everyone ultimately, and there are some stats which show that Gen Z shop more in store than millennials. Because they spent a lot of time during COVID stuck, and they want to be in stores. They want to be out. They want to be sociable. So the concept that you're going to buy everything online, yes, but they want to go in store. So what are you doing about it if you're starting a business for a Gen Z? How are you going to be in that location where you're going to attract those people?
TikTok. TikTok's the rage.
TikTok is the rage.
Yeah.
TikTok, it's interesting.
Talk to us about your experiences there.
Okay, so I feel we have a long way to go with TikTok. I feel that there's certain, if we look at our target demographic, I think they're on TikTok with their daughters. I think that when my daughter will always show me stuff on TikTok, and then I'll look at TikTok, and it kind of takes you down the rabbit hole. I think the algorithm is so fundamentally different. So when you're doing organic growth on TikTok, you got to kind of reset everything if you've been Instagram or Facebook. And for us as a brand, it's also how do we spread ourselves to do all those channels? Because we have a lot of, we are really deep into Meta in both Facebook and Instagram. So do we spread ourselves too thin? Do we have enough people to create that? Otherwise, then I could do more on my TikTok and just, grow that sort of quirkiness on TikTok. So when we were posting, and at the moment we just post, and repurposing isn't working. Repurposing is not the way to do TikTok. It's got to be
you can't do
so
what you put on Instagram. So there's been a bit
of repurposing, all right, and I just think that's not working. So the one successful viral that I had on TikTok, which is like, when I get back, this is my kind of thing of how am I going to influence that we grow TikTok? Because I do believe there's people there, and I do believe there's an audience there, and I do see a lot of different age groups now on TikTok. There was this viral thing about Zara with its sizing, and I kept seeing it on TikTok. And whenever my daughter, I said, it's such crap. They were saying, it's a triangle for this, it's a circle means it comes up small, and it's a square means it comes up big or something. And I said, that's such crap. So I just went into Zara and I sort of went, just so you know, whatever this viral thing's going around is crap, because the truth is, this means Zara Home, this means Zara Woman, and this means TRF. It's just the different brands within Zara. It's nothing to do with sizing. And I got like 2.5 million views on it because I said, Lila, she's 19, my daughter, tell me how I put it up so it will immediately. She said, okay, the first 10 seconds, we're not going to use your voice, but it's going to turn into your voice, and we're going to do this typeface and 2.5 million hits or whatever it was. So I sort of feel on one hand, should I just get my daughter to be in charge of TikTok? And she can do a side hustle. She needs a side hustle anyway. I'm feeling she's becoming a bit entitled at university. And I was speaking to the team and they were saying we did, jobs at the weekend at uni. And Lila's like, but I'm in Spain. I couldn't speak the language to do the job. And I'm like, okay, well, let's think of another one. But it's definitely there. We definitely need to work on it. It's not a primary conversion for us, but it's a market that you need to be in. Because also as a brand, when you have an audience that's not a Gen Z audience. Well, actually, any brand that has a target audience, how do you get those people who are going to become that age? So you as a brand are here and you launch with those people where it resonates. But how do you make sure those people who are currently 30, that when they become 35, 40, we will be the brand that resonates with them?
110%.
Because otherwise you grow old with your customer and then you fall off a cliff. And some beauty brands are a little bit too legacy/dinosauric. And, some of the big conglomerates have got that kind of, you feel it's a brand for your grandma, nearly. So we are a brand definitely for a grown-up woman, but how do we always be the brand for that woman when she reaches that stage in her life that we are relevant to her, which means that although the DNA and fundamentals are there, life changes. We're in different decades. There's new technologies, there's new things happening, which leads us to AI. Okay, and VR. I'm just giving you the I'm giving you the dovetail.
Let's do it. Yep.
All right. So when I was looking at the algorithm we built, Match to Me, it was based upon how do you make it easier for an audience who's not used to buying makeup for the first time online, maybe replenishing, to actually have the confidence to buy online. So it was about we did 3,600 women that we analyzed to look at what their skin, hair and eye combinations would be. And then we match makeup to them. So we built that and 75% of our customers use that as a tool. And the AOV on those people is about 20% more than the AOV on somebody who doesn't do Match to Me. So it works. We know personalization works. So I'm going to kind of strip out personalization, sort of VR, AI. All right. And so we have that. That's our kind of personalization. Then during COVID, a lot of brands who are retail focused knew that they had to do things to get customers online. So they did virtual try-on. All right. So virtual try-on, we had Perfect Core out of Korea, quite a few of these brands. It was bought by L'Oreal. And so L'Oreal did it themselves. And they developed medium technology that you could try it on. Some worked well. Some didn't know how to use the technology because, coming out of COVID, I look on their websites and I think they've really hidden it because to them, they're not D2C first. So it's like it was relevant when all the stores were closed, but now the stores are open, it's not so relevant. For us, it's always been relevant because also then I know so much about our customer. The more personalized we are, the more I understand about our customer and therefore I can deliver more relevant products to her. So when we launch our skincare, so we had 3 bits of information on our customer. So we launched skincare and that now goes to 30 bits of information on our customer. So we know now the age, we know skin, hair and eye, we know sensitivity, we know dark spots, we know that emotional things. When you're doing all of these new technologies, the hardest, most challenging thing is how do you get information out of them which gives you emotional intelligence? Because going back to what we said at the very beginning, emotional intelligence is what sells a brand. So we look at where we go next. And there's definitely, you can look at our journey of when people do the personalization and where there's a drop-off. So we've changed a few things to kind of lower the drop-off in some areas. But virtual try-on, interesting, but to me it's like gamification because I'm not a brand which believes in filters. And a lot of virtual try-on literally puts a filter on your face first and then puts on the makeup. And I'm like, this is so against everything we stand for. It's like, be the best version of yourself, but don't put a filter on to face life. So don't think so. But then there's analysis. So for us, subjective opinion on who you think you are versus who you really are is very important to us. And a lot of people might say, it's like when they go to the hairdresser and they say, my hair's too red. And the hairdresser looks at it and thinks it's a bit green. All right, it's subjective. So when they answer our skincare questionnaire, they're still saying subjectively what they feel. So the next bit that I will fold into my side is being able to identify skin in great detail, because skin identification was very rusty. Like, it couldn't identify because it wasn't good enough yet, and it changes every 3 months. Difference between a spot and an age spot. So cystic acne or an age spot, couldn't tell the difference. But now it can, literally in the last 4 months, 5 months. So we are now at a stage of phase 3 of what a personalization journey means, which is we can take over for you where you're not sure of what answer to give, which might delay you completing it. We will actually help you. So we're going to implement a few things. So that's our kind of next stage. And then there's a further stage, which I can't talk about yet. But it is, you want things that are relevant for your audience to understand that they know will help them to get to a solution. But just to do it for a game or just to do it to keep up with the crowd isn't the reason to do it.
Yeah, no, look, we have to work towards wrapping up. We're almost at time. But that's really interesting how you guys are using that personalization. That's like almost a form of, like it's kind of a competitive advantage, right? That to be able to do that against other brands. It's really smart. So last question, Trinny, before we wrap. Any final words of wisdom that you would love to share with our community of early stage startup founders, particularly e-commerce founders just about to launch something, recently launched something, or they're just post-revenue?
I think there's days when you're going to just think, will it ever work? So I'm just going to address those kind of days because I think that's the most challenging thing because you can feel quite alone as a founder. You can feel, if you're not doing it with a partner, it can be a solitary existence at the beginning. And if you know you're giving it your all, then it's to remember you never know what's behind the closed door. Because we can kind of, take the narrative and make it really that there is no solution to what you might be looking for. And it's just to be open to, there could be something, So for me, I need to remember that.
Awesome. Well, look, thank you so much for your time. It's great to see you again. This was a fantastic interview. And yeah, I'm excited to see how far you take this thing.
Great. Nice to see you again, Nathan.
Hey guys, if you love this episode, make sure to check out my interview with Trinny Woodall on how she built a die-hard community of followers backing her every single move with Trinny London.
The true beauty of our community is that there's a passion and we inspire a passion for them to make the most themselves. But that community itself fosters, lifting up women.